It's football and other F words right here on 1045 The Zone, powered by nobody. We're still waiting for some sponsors. So, what are you waiting for? Come sponsor us. We got some. We may have some sponsors on the horizon. So, we're doing a little stuff. We got a couple of new things on the horizon heading into your Christmas that you'll just have to wait and see when it happens. But happy holidays to you, Stony, at Stony Keeley on Twitter, stackinginbox.com, sobrosnetwork.com. I'm going to throw something out there. Definitive draft guru of Nashville local
Whoa.
media. I'm putting
Who?
you up there.
Who? Me?
You.
Me?
You.
Oh, what an
Yes.
honor. I'm grateful to hear that. I'm thankful to hear that. I put a lot of hard work into it. I like to think people enjoy it. We did a lot of work on the Stacking the Inbox draft guide last year, and buddy, I'm already digging in for next year. I just finished some Cam Scatabo tape last night, as a matter of fact.
We had Brian Billick on Cover 2 with Blaine Bishop and Zach Lyons, 1 p.m. to 3 p.m. And his Wikipedia page for Brian Billick is not updated, but he was with Arizona State last year.
Is that right?
Not with Arizona State this year, but I did see that like Cam Scatabo looking pretty good,
He's
and that whole
productive.
Arizona State team.
He's productive. I don't think he's going to do anything in the NFL, but I don't
Well,
want
I
to rain on
mean,
anybody's parade right now.
it doesn't prevent you from actually, watching him because who was the guy that I always made fun of you for watching last year? He was a Stoops kid,
Drake Stoops.
Drake Stoops. What's he
Yeah.
doing?
I have no idea. I have no
Well,
idea where he's at.
who's doing something is Delmar Glaze, glazing the glaze. We
Yeah.
talked about Delmar Glaze for the longest time, and he's doing things with the Las Vegas Raiders as the right tackle, even though he was drafted in the third round, which Titans do not have a third round pick, but still, we have a pretty good track record.
Yeah, he was one of those guys that I look back on that draft and I think, man, I wish they had doubled up on tackles because it was a deep class. Christian Jones was in there. Matt Goncalves, I think is how you pronounce it. He's starting games for Indianapolis now. They could have got a guy that could have alleviated a lot of this stuff that we're seeing from this team this season so far.
Well, what's interesting, speaking of victory laps, speaking of things that we have talked about, Brian Callahan is just the fucking man. I
He's a
mean, I
dude.
don't know how else you could put it because at this point, all he's done is week after week, while there have been errors or missteps, week after week, he has proven to be a head coach that you can build everything with. Like, that is the guy that could be your leader. He could be a foundation builder. He could be a culture builder. And he's not a guy that has to go on the Manning cast to stay relevant. He's not a guy. He's not a guy that has to throw another coach under the bus to stay relevant in the public eye because he doesn't also need a mouthpiece in
Yeah.
national media to stay relevant. And people think, oh, well, you know, Albert Breer, big New England guy. Well, I got to feed my guy Mike Vrabel a bone and let's put him up on the list. This guy is even in like the top 6
Yeah.
for the Bears job right now in betting odds. And I just, not to, it is to throw pot shots at Mike Vrabel but that is not to diminish what Mike Vrabel did here. But this idea that because what you are, and we're kind of going off on a wild tangent here, so just bear with us. This idea that because what Dan Quinn is doing in Washington means that, oh, well, Mike Vrabel will totally get a job. They're still 2 completely different head coaches in terms of their approach to the game.
Yeah.
And what I mean by that, not all defensive head coaches have the same mindset and have the same ability to coach up a team, to staff a team, to empower a team. And I just got done reading. I don't know if you know this or not because I've only mentioned it every day since I've been back on the fucking radio. I've read this book called The Why Is Everything. And Dan Quinn, of course, because Kyle Shanahan is involved in the Dan Quinn 2016 Atlanta Falcons. Dan Quinn isn't a meddler.
Yeah.
What Brian Callahan is doing with Denard Wilson, autonomy, letting him do his shit on the defense side of the ball. Dan Quinn did that with Kyle Shanahan. Here's the thing. Mike Vrabel can't do that. Mike Vrabel cannot help but meddle. And yes, maybe he needs to go on the Manning cast and be the most unfunny part of that show because obviously the Wilson brothers killed it. But like he's doing damage control. The reason he agreed to do that show, think of it from a PR standpoint. He's afraid of not being in the public eye.
Yeah,
He's
it was like
afraid that he is still the conceived or perceived as the tall, big boy, iron giant of the NFL that is just bringing a dark cloud, and so he's doing damage control. So I think we just got to call a spade like a spade. I know my own where I work and everything. There are a few people that love Mike Vrabel, and that's fine. I appreciate Mike Vrabel. The NFL does not appreciate Mike Vrabel as much as what people want to believe.
yeah, 2 thoughts on that. One, that list came out of favorites to be the next head coach of the Chicago Bears, and Mike Vrabel was, like, 9th on the list, if at all, and it does kinda feel like damage control, like, "Oh, shit, people are not talking about my name in these coaching cycles anymore, so we gotta get my name back out there." If I do the Manning cast, maybe I'll appear humble and relatable because the story coming out of this cycle was what that he was too big for NFL owners. He just kind of took over a room. He was too alpha. So he's got to appear, like he's got a laid back side too. Second thought, I think that I've actually forgotten my second thought. So that's great. We're off to a roaring start here.
Well, I think that's the only thought that matters because I mean it's pretty obvious. Like I mean, I think when I look at it because it's kind of like how I view Tavondre Sweat. I feel the more and more that I read, the more and more that I study, the more that I talk to like Blaine and Brad Hopkins and people that
Sure,
have been in this, been behind the scenes of football. I'm like, the NFL just does not view everything the same way that everybody else. And listen, this is entirely this is a tangent. Like this is
for
what this
sure.
show's about. Because he's like, why are we worrying about an ex? Because she posted her vacation in Europe. I'm not worried about. I am more.
Well,
It's
I,
kind of like to me. We're going to lean this into what Brian Callahan does so well, and why I think because here's the thing. I've called Mike out on it. I know that there are other people out there that are just like this, but like there are so many people who hold Mike Vrabel in such high regard and call that firing so stupid
yeah,
that they will not allow Brian Callahan and his staff to have a chance.
well, that's
And
exactly what I was gonna bring up is
yeah,
that,
there
like,
you go.
the reason that we're that was my second thought. The reason that it's easy for us to go on a tangent about this is because our mentions are full of people that are like, "Shouldn't have fired Vrabel," and it just gets old, man. It gets old kinda sifting through that when we see the positives that Brian Callahan is doing that might not necessarily equate to wins early on in the season, but this is a team that's ready to turn a corner, that's getting there.
And that brings us back to this team. This win, this team is, you know, ever since we started using proof of concept, everybody else has started using proof of concept. Some people have considered that they were the first to use proof of concept, which it's an English standard, phrase. It's been around for probably like at least 60 years.
Hmm,
But in this market, I
missed
think
that.
we're the purveyors of us, using proof of concept.
And player acquisition
And
cycle too.
there you go, player acquisition site. Um, so I don't really want to use that, but this is what we've been pointing to.
Yeah.
This game is the culmination of everything we have talked about since Brian Callahan has gotten hired up until even the Minnesota game because there are still people, Stoney, that think he's a bad play caller. There are still people that think that he's not putting Will Levis in a position to succeed. There are still people that think that he's too conservative. There are still people that think that he's just doing the same old thing as Mike Vrabel, all these empty promises of a modern offense. And I'm like, we've been pounding on it throughout the year, through every week, through thick and thin in the trenches. It is not the same. And
Yeah.
and I think you know who I think tells you people and listen, this is gonna sound a little bit more derogative than I want it to be. I have not always been a ball knower.
Yeah.
Contrary to popular belief and how I
Right.
carry myself, there are times from when we started the pod, I can tell that I've matured from the time that we started the podcast back in late 2017 to now. I always thirst for knowledge. I always look for different varying opinions and try to figure it all out. There are people that are still who maybe have covered this team for 20 years to people that have covered this team and been on podcasts for now 5 years who have not evolved their knowledge of football. And at this point, Callahan is doing a freaking great job. I mean,
Yeah.
I know that sounds weird to say for a 3-8 team. And what I mean by that is that he's doing a great job that is setting you up for success long term.
Yeah. And I like Eddie's comment here where he mentions, I think he's a good leader of men because that has been kind of a point of contention among Titans fans this season. There's been a lot of people, I don't know about you, Zach, but they're in my mentions talking about, beta Brian Callahan and Brian Callahan's not a rah-rah motivational guy. You know what motivates people? When they can look at the tape and see, oh man, if we had just cleaned that up, that would have been a big play there. I think that's part of how he leads people. It's part of you and I watch the tape and we say, "Oh man, this offense is close. Like these guys, this looks really good. Guys are being schemed open. It's just the pass protection's not holding up. The quarterback's not making the right read." One little thing that kind of causes the thing to unravel. But if you're in those meeting rooms and you're one of these players, you're looking at that and you're saying, "Man, we're close. Like this guy has us pretty close in these ball games." And eventually the wins are going to start coming. So no, I mean maybe he's not. And we also don't even see everything that goes on behind closed doors. So we don't know what all of his speeches on game day are like. We're just making assumptions based off of these press conferences, and it's an incomplete evaluation. I think having good bones to your offense is something that's going to help motivate players, not necessarily screaming in their faces.
Yeah, it kind of goes back to leadership, mentorship, you know, it's weird, really weird, right? The same people that are complaining about Brian Callahan being a beta are the same people who think Marcus Mariota was a great leader because AJ Brown told him so because he was crying in the locker room.
Yeah.
Like there is no consistency with some of the analysis across the board. And you know, to me, I look at it like this. I know that not everybody's the style of leader that people think they should be.
Yeah.
But you have to be able to recognize that. But what I see in Brian Callahan is, and I think Eddie is right. This team is definitely motivated. He says right here, Eddie is a all-star chat member of the
He's
night
carrying the
so
group.
far. He's carrying it so far. But Eddie is right in the sense that this team really hasn't had that game where it feels like the entirety of the team quit.
Yeah, like just
Now, there
deflated.
has been times where they're not good enough,
Yeah.
but even in the most successful Mike Vrabel seasons, there was that one game where you're like, "What is everybody doing?"
Yeah.
Like this, and quite frankly, I can remember it was the London game against the Ravens, and there was
Oh,
a Colts game last year where you're just like, "Man, this team feels like it quit." Like, where is the energy? I look at it and I go, this is Brian Callahan is a head coach. He may not be your idea of a traditional head coach. And I think if he was a little bit more funny, like Mike McDaniel, like he would have a little bit of leeway. If he's a little bit more good looking, like Sean McVay, a little bit more leeway. If he had the pedigree of Kyle Shanahan, a little bit more leeway. Like I feel like because he's almost like the everyday man, like he's the everyday man coach, but with the brain of Kyle Shanahan, that people are skeptical because they're used to coach better, play better, which you can get shirts over at SoBrosNetwork.com. Coach better, play better. And who the fuck are we going to throw it to anyway? Like that kind of coach. And so
yeah.
I think there's an adjustment period for fans that they wanted different, they expected different, but they're not accepting of different.
So what you're saying here is our boys got to get into the gym, like go bulk up, join in the workouts with the team, get into a conditioning program,
Put
and
some
maybe
pads on,
yeah,
jump in and, "Oh, here, let me do some, defensive lineman drill."
get one of those, what is it, the pole with the boxing glove on it,
Yeah.
and try to knock balls out and stuff like that, get your
Yeah.
whistle and blow it in people's faces, and then you'll win the fan base over, and that's you'll get those Vrabel holdovers on board after that.
So there's kind of, because we don't have Mike here, we can kind of just like, you know, we're starting a little early. We can kind of dance around on the podcast. And maybe some people don't like that, but we're just having a conversation. Football and Other Efforts has always been, even with Mike, has been about conversations and topics just kind of flowing naturally. And I want to take a second to take a pause right here to talk about Ed Henry's comment. He goes, I like Callahan, but I'm not sure about his head coaching ability. When special teams has not improved all year, jury's still out for me. But special teams has improved. And I think what happens in these kinds of situations is, and this is a bigger than Ed Henry situation.
Yeah, we're not
This is
singling
this
Ed out here.
Yeah, Ed is the voice of the majority. We are definitely in the minority on this, and Coach Mack, I think, did a really good job on Cover 2 with Blaine Bishop and Zach Lyons yesterday on Tuesday, 2:20 p.m. Because I asked him point blank. I asked him the question. Hold on. I think I even got it written down.
How
Let me
about
pull up
that?
my notebook.
A pro's pro. You are ready. Have the notebook right there within reach. My
I
goodness.
do not. I did
Okay.
not write it down though. But I think I pretty much on the fly said, "Hey, obviously Colt Anderson is not walking into the meeting room and in practices, watching Looney Tunes and not bringing up any of the faults, and obviously is coaching. And sometimes, a coach is not good enough on coaching. But when you look at this thing, because the two tenets are like it's an old school kind of thing. You're either coaching it or you're allowing it to happen.
Yeah.
And what is the disconnect from practice and the meeting rooms to the field? And he was as point blank as you could ask any coach any question. And sometimes I love Coach Mack and everything. Sometimes any guest is always going to try and dance around what they are really saying. You may have to decipher. And he said, execution. Like
Yeah.
he was like point blank on the players. And this is a guy that's coached for forever. And what I see on tape is like Cedric Gray missing a tackle, Jaquan Jackson making a bad decision. Those are also not only just personal player problems, but they're also in the heat of the moment decisions where coach football instinct has to take over.
Yeah.
And that's something that Kyle Shanahan talked about in the book that I've read. That's something that Blaine Bishop has talked about numerous times, especially regarding special teams that desire to play special teams, but also the football instincts, the football common sense. And these are situations where the players are failing the coach. And you can tell that that's what the staff believes is because the other day they signed Stanley Morganstone, but all they did was bring in about 6 or 7 additional people to try out that play special teams.
Yeah, they're churning the roster, and I think that's about the best that they can do here Thanksgiving week in November at this point in the season. But I thought Blaine had a really good point on the show at one point this week when he was kind of talking about tackling in general because the Cedric Gray thing had come up, if I'm not mistaken. And it's like you're not tackling each other in practice. It's not something that you can easily replicate. It's one of those things that you just kind of have to have that instinct to connect on during games. And at times it just kind of looks like I don't know if it's inexperience or what, but guys just whiff on these tackles. And the Jaquan Jackson fumble, like that, and the decision making and when to take stuff out, when to let it roll into the end zone. Like, I don't know what you guys want Colt Anderson to do in those situations. Like, he can't get in Jaquan Jackson's head and move his body for him.
Well, he could if he had the Puppet Masters Cosmic Ray
Touche.
induced Clay from Fantastic Four, which I believe that's who John Malkovich is going to be in the new Fantastic Four movie.
Ooh,
But you know, just models the clay and does all that stuff and moves. But I mean, this isn't a necessarily a scheme issue. Now there may be some scheme issues here and there, but when
I
you talk
feel
about, go
I
ahead.
just feel like it's a byproduct of having a lot of rookies, a lot of young players playing special teams out there right now in a situation that the rules have changed this season as well also, which is probably clouding their heads somehow, and you just can't get the same live rounds in practice that you can in game. And what we've seen is that they've improved in that regard as the season has gone on. It's not great, but it's better than it was earlier on.
Yep. Well, look at the punting unit, right? At the beginning of the year, blocked punts were a big issue. And they decided whether it was Brian Callahan and Rand Carthon. This ain't just a Rand Carthon issue. The people that want to say like it's only Rand Carthon. Brian Callahan and Rand Carthon decided to sit down and decided to construct the initial 53.
Yeah.
And they chose to keep Mike's darling baby boy, Caleb Murphy, and Mike's darling baby boy, David Martin Robinson, who David Martin Robinson has done jack shit. And he can't even make special teams. Think about that for a second about David Martin Robinson. He's not even showing out on special teams right now. And he could easily be on special teams, but he is not on special teams. That tells you, and I don't even know why he's still on the roster if he can't even make special teams. I don't know what's going on behind there. That's a whole nother conversation. But I look at it and I go, Cedric Gray's first play as an NFL player in the regular season speed that you expect the NFL, because preseason means jack shit, is a missed tackle. Other than that, when's the last time you heard from Cedric Gray? Because he played the rest of the game. Where'd you hear from Cedric Gray?
Don't
The
know.
Jaquan Jackson thing is an issue, but we knew the Jaquan Jackson thing was going to be an issue because we talked about when he got drafted. But that should also go to tell you that because they're not actively replacing him, but they're actively replacing everybody else, that they still think that no matter what, right now, Jaquan Jackson is still their best option currently available to them.
Yeah.
And but the punt blocks, right? It took a while for them to find the players to switch it out, to get Stoney, to get the ball out correctly. It took a little bit, but they fixed it. I mean, right? I mean, they still did it, and they're still trying to fix the kickoff coverage. The difference between what they're doing, and this is why I don't like lumping him in with Craig Ackerman and the previous, 6 or 7 year special teams disasters, is that they're actively trying to fix it in the
Yeah.
season.
Every
They
week.
never did that. I mean, they never did on special teams last year. The entire Craig Ackerman era, they never tried to attempt to fix their coverage units, their return units, or anything. They just let shit happen and continue to happen and just threw up their hands like, well, what else can we do? At least this team, even though it may be a little late in the season, is at least actively trying to fix it. And that comes down to coaching and the GM getting together to figure out, hey, here are the players that I desperately need because you got rid of all the players and underscored the importance of special teams.
Yeah, I would agree. It's a pretty stark contrast, a pretty dramatic pivot from the way special teams was treated under the last regime to the way that it's treated now. Because, like you said, we didn't see a lot of this churn for special teams under the previous regime. It was more or less just it is what it is. We can win around it, and for a long time, they were able to do that. But when the bottom fell out across the board. And here and now, I think the issue would be is if they weren't doing the things that they're doing with the roster to try and find new guys that can come in on the bottom of the roster and contribute on special teams to make the tangible progress that we've seen from the unit so far this season. Like, if you don't see those things, then I think you can be critical of the coaching of special teams. But at this point, like, I give them credit for at least trying and at least seeing a little bit of improvement from week to week.
Yeah, and really, if Cedric Gray, one person one person had not missed a tackle last week, would we even be talking about special teams?
Well, I don't know. The fumble was pretty bad.
Well, yeah, but I mean that would be solely focused on Jaquan Jackson, a waste of a
Fair
draft
enough.
pick.
Fair enough.
That wouldn't
Fair
be
enough.
on Colt Anderson, right? I mean, like,
Yeah. Yeah.
because the problem with that was he caught it, never really secured it, and then he gets hit. It's not like it was a Kyle Phillips-esque situation where he just like it falls through his arms. He just never really secures it before he starts running.
Yeah.
But we probably wouldn't be talking about special teams in
Yeah.
or
You're
Colt
right.
Anderson for at least this week. And I think that should go to tell you that it's not a scheme issue because there were how many kickoffs, how many punt returns or punt coverages that they had to do and all that kind of stuff. It's just a one person kind of thing. The problem is that it is a almost for the most case has been like a one person almost every week fucks up in a big way, and
Yeah.
they screw up in a big way where it makes you think that it's the coach. But at a certain point, you have to understand that if it's a different player, it's just a human error. Like if it
Yeah.
was the same player, maybe. QC Hawk says, "What is keeping Jackson on the team?" It can't be Spears at this point. No need to keep the first team training table running back happy anymore. Think autocorrect got him there. Um, but um, I think they don't have a better option. I mean, go back to when Wizen Hunt was coach because I think he just threw Dorial Green Beckham out there cold. And they
Yeah.
were like, well, we didn't know if he could really catch punts, but were tired of our other punt returner and their choices. And, Blaine says it this way. And I think that you got to remember that Blaine comes from a player's perspective. So he is saying and explaining things from the viewpoint of this is what is best for the player.
Yeah.
Jaquan Jackson is a 6th-round rookie. He is not a guy that has been, around for forever making these mistakes. He's 6th-round rookie. But if you were to pull him, who's replacing him?
I mean, I I don't
That is
know.
the question. And
Yeah.
and it and that's where you're at right now is that they obviously think, I don't know where Kearis Jackson is in his health because I know he got injured. I don't know
Mhm.
where he's at all right now, but they feel that Jaquan Jackson, out of the myriad of people that they had as punt returner and kick returner throughout the whole year. I mean, there was a guy named Sam Schnee out there. I mean, they had a list of like 7 or 8 people auditioning for this job.
Yeah.
Jaquan Jackson is the best guy. Does that mean that mean you go with him into next year as the best guy? No. But that is telling you right then and there that this is their best guy. And some of these are forced fumbles, right? They're not like the punt that we saw this past week. And listen, he's making terrible decisions. He's moving horizontal instead of vertical. A lot of bad to his game. But they feel that he is their best option on the roster with who to keep active and who to not keep active on game day. And that's another key to this whole situation with Jaquan Jackson. I can't believe we spent this much time on Jaquan Jackson because I want to get to other players. But that I'm just trying to lay out the reasoning from the football team perspective.
Well, and I think there's another layer of this too. If they do really believe in this guy and, you know, Tyke Tolbert endorses him with his full chest, wants him out there, and Colt Anderson still thinks he's the best guy for the job, maybe it's a situation in this season where you kind of take him or you kind of let him take his lumps a little bit. And it's like some other positions that we've talked about where maybe you just let him go out there and just work through it, work it out as a rookie, and maybe he comes out better on the other side. Obviously, probably the optimistic take right there, but could be another potential explanation as to why they're so hesitant to yank the leash on him.
Yeah, I'm not a Jaquan Jackson fan. So, I mean, like, it's hard. It really hurts the soul to try to be objective
Yeah,
but like QC Hawk's like, Boyd used to do it, assuming they don't want him out there. Well, he was injured. for the most part. I mean, he's
Yeah.
been dealing with shoulder injury. He's old. He's not fast. I mean, sure, he's not going to fumble, but I mean, that's because he's not going to move it anyway. He's not going to even attempt. You do have to have some kind of aggressive mentality when it comes to being a returner, because it's probably the most frightening job out of
I would think
any
so.
football player. And so you kind of have to have this I can do it with the ball in my hand kind of mentality. The problem is that he's just not able to do it. And there's always that disconnect. But let's talk about people who don't have disconnect. And I got I brought it up a couple days ago, and I got to bring it up because I got you in front of me. Peter Skoronsky coming out of the bye has been freaking phenomenal. One
Yeah.
sack, if I'm not mistaken, 8 other pressures out of every game. That's over every game since coming out of the bye from week 6 to now week 12. He has been a animal. He's been putting people in the dirt in the run game. And I asked Coach Mack, and I want to get your opinion, but Coach Mack said, dude's just comfortable playing guard.
Yeah.
And I am loving what I'm seeing for Peter Skoronsky, and you guys need to ignore the noise of maybe some other pundits or anything, or anybody telling you that Peter Skoronsky is not good. Peter Skoronsky has been killing it since the Colts game on.
Yeah, absolutely, man. I think there's a lot about this team that we said coming into the season. It's just a matter of how quickly they can gel together. How quickly can they adjust to new coaches, new scheme, new players around them, that sort of thing. With Skoronski, man, it feels like he's really found a groove and things are kind of clicking a little more for him and allowing him to play faster and kind of lean into some of the strengths that he's had. I've been particularly impressed with the pass protection. It seems like he's developed a pretty nice propensity to just kind of drop his anchor and he ain't moving. He ain't moving back beyond that. Playing next to JC Latham, I think the left side of this line, Texans game notwithstanding for Latham because it was pretty rough, but these two have developed along with Bill Callahan and this unit as a whole to a really formidable duo on the left side of that line. And it's fun to watch, man. I to me, what it feels like we're watching Peter Skoronsky gain a mastery of this blocking scheme in real time. And this is the guy that I thought we'd see when I said he was due for an all-pro year under Bill Callahan.
It's been interesting, right? Because I kind of view him as this. He's the 11th overall pick, the first round
Yeah,
pick. Regardless of who in the war room was pushing for Peter Skoronsky, he is the 11th round pick. And I always thought that Peter Skoronsky, I knew, and most of the NFL knew, not a tackle.
right. Yeah.
And we all expected all pro guard. I just don't think I truly grasp how hard it is probably for rookie offensive linemen to go into from left tackle to guard. You think that would be easier, but I don't think it actually was. And now then he's learning from Jason Hodeling, who is I don't even know where he's at. He's probably back at some
He
reform
was
school in high school somewhere.
he was the assistant for the Bears and
Oh,
yeah,
that's right. Where
yeah.
Nate Davis got kicked out and didn't do anything.
Yeah,
So I look at the Peter Skoronsky thing and I'm like, okay, I don't think we really understood. There's a lot about last year that I'm starting to understand that I don't think they really coached people very well.
yeah,
I mean, it just didn't, and that's I don't think they coach the younger players as well as we all think they could or should have. And I look at Peter Skoronsky, I think, he's shifting to a new scheme, shifting under a new coach, new responsibilities, and then the coach sucks.
yeah,
And then his left tackle situation sucks, and his center situation sucks. And now both of those things got improved this year, including the coaching, including the scheme. And it took him a little while to gel, but it only really took him 5 weeks to gel. Because I mean, I'm serious. Starting out of week 6, This dude's been a man possessed, one of the best guards in the NFL since week 6.
Yeah, absolutely, and I'd be curious to know, like, how the previous regime coached what they ran because they did run a lot more zone runs and, it is more, like, lateral movement. It's designed to stretch the defense, horizontally to open up run lanes. It places more of an emphasis on the running back's vision to find and identify those lanes. What I'm kinda curious about is the coaching protocol for that. Like, are you just coaching guys to use their athleticism to move side to side, identify blockers in their zone, displace them, and that sort of thing? And if that's sort of the book on what this previous regime was coaching, because that's very different from what Bill Callahan is running right now. And I've got a clip on my Twitter feed, the Tony Pollard touchdown, where it looks like they're running some version of trap with Tyler Boyd coming in to take the in man on the line of scrimmage, JC Latham and NPF both climbing, identifying very specific particular blocks for like 8 different people, where all of this stuff has to go a certain way for this very specific lane to open up. And they execute on it well enough for Tony Pollard to score a touchdown. But when you watch all these moving parts, it does look just on the surface level. I mean, I don't think you have to be an offensive line expert to understand there's a lot of moving parts. It looks a lot different. And if you're having to think about, okay, where am I supposed to be on this play and reading the defense and, okay, which person is going to come into my periphery for me to block? Who do I have to beat to secure my block? That sort of thing. Maybe it does kind of slow down the mental processing and maybe they can't execute it as quickly or efficiently. And as time goes on, they gain that. So that to me is kind of nitpicking how the scheme could be different and why we might have seen this unit as a whole, not just Skoronski, get off to a slower start than I think we probably expected them to.
Yeah, I mean, obviously Latham had a bad game on Sunday, but he's been an outstanding first round pick. Then you look at Peter Skronsky, he's turning into an outstanding first round pick.
Yeah.
You're going to have Lloyd Cushenberry back next year. I mean, you got those guys playing really good football. You got them for next year. Dylan Radins is a guy that I would consider signing to an extension, kind of like I would sign NWI to an extension.
Yeah.
Try to fill these holes with good players that know your system instead of bringing someone in, paying a couple mil extra to bring someone in that's just maybe a tad bit better that need that adjustment period. And so that brings me to right tackle. So I look at NPF. It wasn't garbage. It wasn't
Yeah.
good, but it wasn't garbage.
Yeah, I think there were a couple of plays that I really liked his hand usage, which is not something that I've said about NPF this season. I think there were plays where he kind of helped out the right guard and fired his hands into the hip of a defender and really affected the play. There were a couple of times. I mean, he had a pancake on the tape for this game as well. So again, like you go back to the
A pancake against a 110-pound, slow-footed Kamari Lassiter?
I'm taking every win that I can get with NPF,
Okay.
Zach. That's what I'm doing here. Like, you see those moments that are popping up now, but I just still think that he was getting a lot of help from the tight ends. I think I still don't think they trust him on an island one on one. And there's a part of me that still thinks that once Leroy Watson is healthy, he's going to be the guy that they put back out there.
It'll be interesting, right, to see what they do because I do think they feel the MPF played okay.
Yeah,
And I never really feel like they've fallen in love with Leroy Watson as much as we have.
yeah.
And so I do wonder, is it just going to be Leroy Watson, the John Ajuku role, or is it going to be Leroy Watson? Like, that is where I'm kind of at right now.
I mean, it might just be NPF. I mean, they might just keep rolling with the guy. I mean, it's clear. I think they wanted him to be the guy going into the
Yeah.
season. They had a faith in him that, warranted or not, they had their reasons for. But if you start seeing like incremental improvement from NPF, I'm not saying you will, but I think
He's
they're
still under contract next year.
I don't oh god, I don't even wanna think about that right now, Zach. But I think their willingness, what they've shown us in their actions by playing him, is that they want him to be the guy, and I think that's gonna make them I think they've got an affinity for him, and he's probably going to keep getting the reps to kinda work through it.
All right, Stoney. I want to move to the defensive side of the ball because I don't want to talk Will Levis yet. I want to move to the defense because they put
Okay.
on, to me, the best performance I've seen from this Tennessee Titans defense in through an entire game, not just for this era, but probably, and I may be forgetting a game between now and then, but this is the most memorable. This will be burned in my head. Would be the Los Angeles Rams game and the San Francisco 49ers game a couple of years ago in 2021, where the defense just dominated. I mean, they just carried those games. And this defense got somehow better. And not just a little bit better, they got exponentially better.
Yeah.
I look at that and I look at what this defense did. Obviously, we talk about Tavondre Sweat all the time. We are light years ahead of anybody on Tavondre Sweat train. We've been objectively critical when it mattered about Jeffrey Simmons, and he has turned it up. But I want to throw a stat out there for you before we get to Kenneth Murray, because I want to talk about the secondary. The Tennessee Titans defense, and this is all Greg Williams' influence, baby. They blitz 78.9% of the time.
That's crazy.
So let me rephrase it. 78.9% of the time that they blitz comes from cover zero.
Yeah.
Now, the reason why that is so crazy for those that do not know, that means your secondary has to hold their assignments for the blitz to even work.
Yeah, because
For
there's
you
no
to even
safety
gain
help.
a pressure.
Uh,
It's
Nobody back there.
ridiculous. So, in saying that, that means that they are entrusting still Jarvis Brownlee Jr. and Daryl Baker Jr. and Roger McCreary to hold up their assignments in most of these situations by themselves. Is Denard Wilson a madman or is Denard Wilson an evil genius? Because it's kind of been working these last 3 weeks.
Yeah, I think there's a little bit of evil genius to it, but I think there's confidence in the players because I think both of those guys, Brownlee and Baker both, have put some good tape out there. So it's probably emboldening Denard Wilson to say, "You know what? We can run some cover zero and really get after the quarterback and really defend the run." And I think he's willing to call it. Like I think this is an aggressive coach that is willing to give guys a shot to prove that they can't. And if you prove that you can't, maybe he changes things up. But in this case, the corners were doing well enough and they were getting home with the pass rush, filling gaps against the run, getting into the flat, making the tackles. The way I phrased it, they really defended the run, which was a strength of this Houston Texans team. They played the run like they took pride in that run defense. And to me, that is when things are working, I think it's just one of those situations where it empowers the players to do their job better and it makes the coach a little more willing to roll the dice a little more frequently.
And Eddie brings up a good point. How bad is your pass rush? You trust your backup corners to provide coverage sacks. And to be honest with you, though, that's a Greg Williams staple. Blaine said it today that, you know, it was our job. Like that is that when you are a Greg Williams disciple, it was our job to do it. And we took pride in doing it. We were coached to do it and we did
Yeah.
it. And it's not and they had good pass rush players. Like they had great pass rush players in those times when Blaine was here. So like it's just how that scheme works. And I think about it and I go, man, it's just crazy. And what's more interesting about this whole Texans offense versus defense is that much like Baltimore, and not many teams are willing to do this, but much like Baltimore in the playoffs last year against the Texans, Denard Wilson said, "Screw you, Bobby Slowick. We ain't scared of you. We're not scared of CJ Stroud. Beat us through the air."
Yeah.
and the Texans couldn't do it. They turned
Well,
it over twice. They couldn't run the ball. It was over. If you stop the run on the Texans, good luck
yeah.
for them.
I thought it was particularly interesting that there were a couple of plays where they were able to beat him through the air. Jarvis Brownlee Jr. gives up that big reception to Nico Collins, but a testament to the rookie playing like a veteran, just erases it from his memory and just bounces right back, has a good drive and has a pass break up and just playing shutdown corner for the rest of the game. So even in those moments where they were able to pass the ball and find success down the field, it didn't matter because this defense as a whole was able to brush it off in a resilient performance and just get back to playing their game like nothing had happened.
What do you think? I wouldn't have noticed in the game. Broadcast angle, I wouldn't have ever noticed. If I was at the game, maybe I would have. But switching Kenneth Murray to Mike from the weak side linebacker, the Will, to the Mike was looks like a freaking stroke of genius. And I really do think that that helped in the run defense because he was able to shoot those gaps and run blitz a little bit more than and a little bit more freely and decisively than he would at the Will. But I kind of wish that Brian Callahan hadn't told us right after the game they did that. I would have liked for that to have been like a little hidden nugget, like, oh, we're all watching all 22 the next morning. And then, like, oh, look at this. Look at this. Let us discover.
Like,
Leave
what
something
changed?
on the table for us.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I think that switch kind of enabled Kenneth Murray to be a little more aggressive and to flow a little bit better, which I think is the strength of his game. Like even when they signed him, we were on this show talking about how at his best and the full vision of Kenneth Murray, it is see ball, get ball. Like just go tenacious athlete, go after the ball carrier, go get him. And that was a lot of what he did was like just quickly identifying and getting to the spot, meeting the ball carrier in the backfield.
Yeah, it's awesome. I thought the defense, really cranked it up in the second half. Kudos to Mike Brown, to Daryl Worley for filling in. Obviously Mike Brown has been doing it and since Quandre Diggs has gone down. Talk about a NWI kind of guy where, you know, that's a guy that I say, hey, if you don't think you can fill the safety needs in a reasonable manner in free agency, if you don't want to waste a draft pick on safety, bring him back. Bring Mike Brown back. Because at this point, he fits your system, and we know he works well with Amani Hooker, who's going to be here.
Yeah.
Uh,
I
I
think he's
mean, what
played
else can you
well.
say?
Yeah, he's played
Yeah.
well the last 2 games and kind of bracketing wide receivers, but like smooth backpedal, change of direction. Like he's held his own with NFL athletes and then shown a propensity to lower the boom and make the tackle. And I know everybody's thinking about that flag that he drew in the Vikings game, but there's another play in that game where he hits Jordan Addison at the sideline and damn near folds him in half. Like this is kind of a headhunter. And like a lot of the other young players on the team, he's still kind of getting acclimated to life in the NFL, but he has proven that adds a little bit of value on special teams too. So like he's proven that he's a valuable player on the back end of this roster. I got no qualms with the idea of retaining him and factoring him into the discussion moving forward.
I mean, look at it this way. So he goes down, Quandre Diggs goes down with injury in the middle of the week 9 game, right at the very beginning.
Yeah.
And Mike Brown comes in, and you're talking about still in terms of EPA per play allowed, Tennessee Titans defense is 11. And I'm looking at this and I'm thinking, okay, this defense is a borderline top 10 defense with Mike Brown, uh, Amani Hooker, but last week it was Daryl Worley, a 5th-round rookie corner, Roger McCreary, and an undrafted free agent kind of man about town that's a younger journeyman and Daryl Baker Jr., Jerome Baker, who just got here, and before that it was Jack Gibbons, an undrafted free agent, and Kenneth Murray, who had been maybe playing a little bit of miscast, football.
Yeah.
Harold Landry, who may be generous to call him a B-plus player at this point. Arden Key, who they were actively trying to replace and said that was just a situational pass rusher.
Right.
And then Tavondre Sweat and Jeffrey Simmons. And I'm looking at it, it's like there's a couple big names in there, but talent-wise, it's Amani Hooker, Roger McCurry, and the two guys in the middle uh, on the line, Tavondre Sweat and Jeffrey Simmons. And then it's just a bunch of guys that are, you know, B-plus players, and most of them are probably should be considered C-plus players, but Denard Wilson is getting the most out of them on a consistent basis. Like, there'd be that one game where you'd see, like, Greg Maben step up, and he'd be really awesome, then he would suck the next game, and then he'd get replaced. These guys are consistently performing week in and week out, and I know that I know that Denard Wilson will probably get interviews, and if he gets an interview for a head coaching job, I would say he'd likely get it because he should blow them away, unless Jason Hotelling is interviewing for the same job because he's the best interview that Mike Vrabel's ever seen. Um, but like, I really do think that Denard Wilson will be back next year, and this is going to lead us into our Will Levis conversation. If he's back next year, this defense will be even better next year. And I just have to say, I do have to, and I know we've been, again, objectively hard on Denard Wilson for some of his game plans and curious, but what he's been able to do 9 times out of 10 with the pieces that he's got, you got to give kudos to Denard Wilson.
Well, and it for me goes back to something that we talked about when we were kind of learning more about Denard Wilson back in the offseason and kind of his philosophy, the coaches that he's coached under, kind of projecting what influences we thought would be present in this Titans defense. Sorry, I'm playing hurt tonight. My voice is trying to give out on me here, but I think about kind of studying the scheme a little bit more and realizing, hearing him talk about playing fast and being aggressive, playing fast, processing quickly, how it streamlines things for the players. So whereas we talk a lot about timing with Brian Callahan and that offense and how, it takes a little bit of time to gel, on Denard's side with the defense kind of streamlining, doing a little more like see ball, get ball, like we keep saying with Kenneth Murray. I kind of feel like for a lot of guys, it sort of simplifies the defense. And you're not thinking about all these coverage rotations and passing off guys and communicating after the snap and all that. It's just, you've got a job to do. You're free to go out there and execute it. And I think it enables guys to play fast. And in turn, it empowers them to be better. And I think we're starting to see the effects of that because guys that were technically on the back end of the roster or not even on the roster at all back in August are starting to play well and show tangible improvement.
It's just, you look at this draft class, everybody is meeting the minimum expectations, but really even J.C. Latham, Tavondre Sweat, and Jarvis Brownlee Jr. is exceeding the minimum expectations from where they were drafted. So it's just a
For
really
sure.
good base and jumping off point for this entire team. And I want to go now to Will Levis. And I think there's multiple different ways to take this conversation. But I was talking with Blaine, and we were talking to Brian Billick, and he said, Bill Walsh said, you have 24 to 25 games to figure out if you have the guy or not. If you haven't shown that you are the guy, and he doesn't mean like elite, he doesn't mean franchise guy, he just means the guy.
A
If
dude.
you have shown that you cannot be the guy, it's time to go.
Yeah.
And really, Will Levis has only had 15 full starts from start to finish. Everything else, he's got injured fairly early in the game. So I look at it and go, okay, rest away. Technically, we should know what he is. And we've always said by the end of the year, we should know what Will Levis is, what this team thinks. So I look at it and I go, okay, let's take this down a path of what we've seen these last 3 weeks. Because what we've seen these last 3 weeks is development. It's progress. It is tangible things you can see, not only in the game, but on the stat sheet. So we're seeing tangible difference.
Against 3 of the best defenses in the league, no less.
Right. Against the three, really 1, 2, and 3, right? Weren't they 1, 2, and 3 in terms of success rate allowed?
Yeah,
Like the best. And they've been able to do this. And not just Will Levis, but the entire offense has been able to do certain things and looked very, very good. And they're about to have a really easy schedule. So that means that it should look as good or better than what we have already seen. And I think, Will Levis has never had a season where back to back he's had a truly the same system,
yeah.
truly the same voice in his ear. And I think, damn, I was like, he's shown a lot of progress. And I think it's becoming more and more apparent with each and every week. He'd have to really reverse for me to change my mind. I mean, reverse bad to like week 1, week 2, week 3, Will Levis.
Yeah.
And I think, man, even if he's not your guy at the end of his rookie contract, if you were able to be competitive enough and win enough games to keep your job afloat while you sort out the quarterback issue and look competent, he could turn into something because of stability and because everything around him will theoretically be better even next year as well.
Yeah, there's another layer of this too, like, you're talking about, 3 back-to-back-to-back performances that he strung together where we've come on this show and said, "Man, this is improvement. This has been pretty decent." Maybe even eating a little crow on Will Levis for pivoting so greatly, at the beginning of the season. Even when 2023 ended and we felt optimistic about Levis's traits, his tools with Brian Callahan, you still acknowledge that there were a lot of ups and downs in 2023. People cite the Atlanta game, people cite the Miami game. Look how far on the schedule those games were apart. So it was a roller coaster. It has been a roller coaster. But the last 3 games have been consistency. And that is something that we talked about wanting him to iron out this season. So just like step 1, show that you can play decent enough at a consistent level. I don't know that you would call 3 games consistent just yet, but to me it's a positive development. And if he keeps having these positive developments, then I think you probably feel a little more comfortable by season's end saying, "All right, this is a dude that we can win with." And part of the conversation, like you kind of alluded to as well, is he doesn't have to be Patrick Mahomes for the team to succeed. The things that I've been critical of for Will Levis are the pocket awareness, the running into sacks, like that sort of thing. It's not that it's just gone all of a sudden, right? Because he's still doing it. He's still talking about taking unnecessary sacks. Brian Callahan's talking about it in his press conferences as well. But it's the fact that they're kind of getting to a point where they're able to move the ball around it and they're able to score points, and in the case on Sunday they're able to win a game that they shouldn't have won, that they were more than a touchdown underdog against the AFC South leading Houston Texans. They were looked at as an underdog and they were able to work around his weaknesses to still win that game. And Levis looked to me better than he probably ever has from an efficiency standpoint in the NFL. So that's kind of encouraging too, because you start thinking like all these things that we harped on earlier on in the season, maybe there are workarounds for that this staff is finding as well. And that's also a positive development. So you start stacking these positive developments, and I think you get a more complete eval by season's end, and you're probably feeling a little bit better about the guy.
Well, I look at it this way too. We have been tough on Will Levis as since he was a draft prospect.
I was about to say since
So
before he was drafted.
yeah, so I can't sit here and say, "Hey, I need to see this," or "I need to see that" for me to start buying in a little bit more and then just
Yeah,
like totally dismiss it when it happens. Because that's not fair to anybody that is trying to listen to this show, and it's not fair
sure,
analysis. Now, I don't think either of us are saying that we think that he is going to win you a Super Bowl. I don't think any of us are going to say that he's Patrick Mahomes. And none of us really right now are really saying that he is for sure going to be the guy in 2025. But
sure.
right now, he is trending in that direction. I think that is a testament to Brian Callahan, the scheme, people around him as well coming together and knowing their parts and their roles in the offense. A lot of this was just gelling together because really think about Tyler Boyd is the only guy that is familiar with this offense.
Yeah,
And the way that Brian Callahan talks about he is learning how to play the position. He's not learning how to throw the ball. He's not learning to know that, oh, I got to hike, I got to huddle, I got to do this and that. These are my responsibilities. He doesn't know how to play the position.
yeah,
That goes back to college coaching, but that also goes back to last year. I don't think Brian Callahan really understood the depths at to which he was going to have to teach Will Levis. I think he thought there was a higher floor associated with Will Levis because he had been in the league a year.
yeah,
And yes, QC Hawk was efforts in that hashtag Never Levis podcast. Yes, absolutely. 100% started it. 100% said he was going the second round. We'll never shy away from it. And still, in my bones, I am entirely skeptical in my heart,
yeah. Me too.
but my gut, but logic dictates the objectivity that I see and the growth that I see. And I've always had this belief in Brian Callahan that he is an excellent coach. And I think that we are starting to see stuff and it's like, okay, Mel Kiper talked really highly of him, of Will Levis. There have been other people talk really highly of Will Levis that are well respected in the community. Maybe that belief factor in Will Levis, the steadfast messaging that he is our guy no matter what, the way that Brian Callen communicates and teaches and coach, it was just always going to take time because I look at Levis right now and I'm like, okay, he's shown enough. Whereas, doesn't the same rule you mentioned about ratings apply to Levis? Why start over? And this is Ed Henry. Ratings has shown more dating back to last year than really Will Levis has shown over his course. So it's all about consistency. Whereas a guard is a totally different situation than also a quarterback situation. It can't be that kind of rule can't be linear across everything. But I look at Will Levis and I'm saying, okay, this Will Levis that we've seen in 3 weeks, the growth that we've seen on the field, the production that has come with it. I'm like, okay, this is 2025 quarterback right now. Now he's at the point where I think that's the most logical and probable outcome. He still has to earn it and maintain it. It's not just given, it's not a given fact. But I do think that it is the most probable outcome. And I think that's a testament to Will Levis, his hard work. And I also think it's a testament of Brian Callahan and the faith and the belief that he's shown in him. And I think it also says a lot about just, we make he's old. It's going to take him a while to learn and teach an old dog new tricks. And you're teaching an old dog, it feels like, with the way that's described, you're giving him an entirely new toolbox with funky looking tools that he's never seen before. And you're telling him to, okay, go over here and fix his toilet.
You're teaching a dog to start a lawnmower.
Yes, that's what it feels like. I
A
mean, to be
literal
honest
dog.
with you. Yeah, literal dog trying to do the lawn and weed eat and edge and
Yeah.
all that kind of stuff. And he's learning on the fly, getting live game reps, and it's starting to slow down for him. It's not perfect. It's probably never going to end up looking perfect on a consistent basis because we've talked about this before. I've come to the distinct realization you're not going to find Patrick Mahomes more than likely.
Yeah.
You have to find a quarterback that could be part of a team that is built to stop Patrick Mahomes. Because Patrick Mahomes in his second year was uncanny. Now, even Josh Allen was that good in his second year, and he had more reps than Patrick Mahomes. And I think Josh Allen is an excellent quarterback. That you're not going to find that Joe Burrow more than likely. Like Levis has to be viewed as, I almost think, like Jared Goff, a guy that you're going to have to handhold for a while, but he can take that next leap if you have the belief and faith in him. Sean McVay notoriously lost the belief and faith in taking the training wheels off Jared Goff, and that dissolved their situation. I don't think that will be that issue with Brian Callahan.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting to think about how much we've talked about this offense gelling and how it's taken Will Levis quite a while to gel into this position, to learn to play quarterback. So there's not a Patrick Mahomes in the draft. So if even if you do find a guy in the draft, you decide that Levis is not the guy, you're flipping the hourglass back over. You're starting from scratch. It's back to the drawing board, and you're entering 2025 in another situation where we're talking about, well, it depends on how long it takes for the quarterback to get acclimated, how long it takes for things to gel. And so I don't think that, well, let me put it this way, because I don't want to just recklessly speculate about what Brian Callahan is feeling, but in that situation, I would say I want Will Levis to succeed. I want him to be the guy for 2025, because on top of the progress, it's also continuity, and we can get better and focus on other areas in the player acquisition cycle. So in an ideal world, Levis wins the job, slams the door shut. There's no doubt about it. He's the guy. But even if it's not quite, like, if he just keeps this steady, consistent trajectory that he's on, I think they're probably going to be more willing to give him another look in 2025 than just automatically saying, nah, we're starting over with a new quarterback.
Well, and also you have a new set of directive, right, from your coaching staff of what to improve on in the offseason.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, okay, so their focus was completion percentage, right? Big thing, being, having an fish completion percentage. They've done wonders on that. I mean, we talk about it all the time, but they've really done wonders on that. Now it's the next step. Okay, well, you're starting in game. He's starting to process things faster, go through his reads. He's starting to do certain things better. So now you don't really have to worry about that if that continues. So now he doesn't have to learn new terminology, new plays. I mean, there'll be some new plays, but he doesn't have to learn so much in the offseason. And now he can focus. Okay, you have to focus on keeping your upper body still. You have to focus on your pocket presence. You have to do this and that. And that could be an entirely new lease on life for Will Levis. So we do have it right here. I've been waiting. You have not missed it, Bert. But did I miss Stoney's breastfed player of the week? Do you have the breastfed player of the week?
The breastfed player of the week. I don't. I wasn't ready for it. I don't even remember why we called Jack Gibbons the
Well,
breastfed player of the week.
because he got carried like he was being breastfed on that first pump block, because it looked like a
Oh,
slot.
okay.
He was just hanging on the guy's neck and looked like he's being breastfed.
Yeah, no,
So,
I don't. I'm
is there
letting
a
Bird
week
down.
boy moment breastfed player of the week? Kamari Lassiter, I guess, maybe.
Yeah, if you get steamrolled by NPF, that's you're breastfed baby. Yeah.
Yeah, breastfed baby of the week, Kamari Lassiter, right there.
We gotta
Uh,
ask, hey, I don't know if you were listening to Buck's show this morning, but there was a revelation about Bert having, I think his dad has a necklace of his baby teeth.
w-
We need Bert to chime in here, but that was
what?
crazy. I mean, it's the man of mystery. Like, he's my favorite person at that station, undoubtedly.
That is, we'll see what Bert has to say about his dad
That's
having a necklace of baby teeth.
that's what
Are you
the
sure it's
next
Bert and not Jackson?
Oh, it was Bert. He came in talking about
Okay.
eating old pepperoni.
Okay. Well, old pepperoni's always good. Doesn't matter.
But that's gonna be my next thing is gonna be my baby teeth player of the week. The guy you
Baby teeth player of the week.
the guy you can't get rid of. You gotta keep him in a jar and put him on a necklace.
He 100%. This is from Bert. He 100% has a necklace of my baby teeth. What a no! I don't know if we need a pick.
Did we just completely derail the stream from you? Like,
I don't.
your
I
mind
mean, they
looks
have.
blown.
Speaking of, so we were yesterday. I was on the Jackson was our producer yesterday on Cover Two, and he was talking about that picture of the I guess we're probably from the early '90s, late '80s of like the two University of Tennessee fans that have the wild hairdo and like the hat that people always share. They're holding hands and are very mad and sad. Do you know this picture?
Yeah.
So Jackson was talking about it yesterday, and he said asked if he could share that picture, and I go yeah sure, and Blaine goes typical Blaine fashion, who are those people? And I go well I think they're Jackson's parents, and Jackson got really upset. I said well I'll just Photoshop you in there, so I have Photoshopped Jackson in that picture.
That is so good.
Put him right behind there with mom and dad.
Yeah, there you
So
go.
there
There
you
you go.
go. But no, the where where were we? Um
Oh, the
So
baby
we're
teeth
really
player
talking
of the
about
week.
baby teeth and breastfed players and all that kind of stuff.
Baby teeth
Um,
player of the week is NWI. I'm with
and
QC
does
Hawk.
that mean he's got grit, like grit and grind, because your teeth fell out because you grinded?
Um, I was gonna say you just wanna keep him in a jar and put him on a necklace. You don't wanna get rid of him.
Okay, gotcha. Well, hey, listen, I'm with you. You got to extend NWI. I mean, I think extending NWI and Dylan Radins would be a very prudent move
Yeah, for
by the
sure.
Tennessee Titans.
Yeah.
So when you look at this performance against the um who'd they just play? I've just totally blanked
The
in my
Houston Texans.
the Houston Texans. When you look at this when you look at this game, and now you're going up against Washington. I mean, is there a chance in your mind, we're gonna say it, 9-8 seems very possible right now.
Oh.
And we talked about it a couple weeks ago, the march to the playoffs starts, but I know people are always going to laugh. Well, it's 2%. New York Times tells me it's 2% that the Tennessee Titans make the Super Bowl.
The New York Times.
But I look at it like I remember when the Jacksonville Jaguars were, you know, 4-7, then they went 4-8 and all this kind of stuff. And then the Tennessee Titans were 7-5, which guess what? The Houston Texans are 7-5. And then, the Tennessee Titans had their remaining opponents on their schedule was .509 winning percentage. Houston Texans was .500. Like, the Indianapolis Colts is kind of the team that everybody has to worry about right now because they have an even easier schedule than Tennessee Titans. This really feels like it could set up that one of those crazier things that have happened in the NFL than other than one AFC South team leading the charge and then suddenly shitting themselves for another AFC South team just to come up out of nowhere.
Yeah, and I think the thing that probably should give Titans fans hope is that the Texans aren't really playing that well on offense. I mean, CJ Stroud just doesn't really look like the historic rookie record setter that he was last year. Like this is a very gettable team. This team screams one and done, even if they do win the division and make the playoffs. This schedule sets up really nicely. I mean, even against the Buffalo Bills and the Detroit Lions, you saw strides from the Titans where it was competitive early on. And then same with the Chargers, and then they probably could have beaten the Vikings, and then they put it together and they did beat the Texans. That is an absolutely brutal stretch in hindsight. But now you look at what's left, what's ahead on this schedule, and if the team that showed up on Sunday shows up in those games, man, I don't want to start getting people's hopes up but 9-8 is a possibility. These look like gettable games. Even this Commanders team on Sunday does not look like the team we saw at 7-2. They've lost 3 in a row. They're giving up a ton of rushing yards. This is a winnable game. And I think maybe, like you said, the Colts do scare you, but they have the opportunity to get another head-to-head matchup on them. They have an opportunity to win that game. Maybe the Bengals scare you, but they're not playing particularly inspired football either. Like, it's not out the realm of possibility for them to finish 9-8. I do think they are probably going to have to finish 9-8 to get to the playoffs, but I don't know that I'm there yet. But man, I feel like they've made it out of the woods in the tough part of their schedule.
So you kind of look at, the Houston Texans right now, right? Look at their schedule. I mean, have you looked at their schedule? I know I've mentioned it before, but I mean, have you actually looked at it?
I looked at it on Sunday when people were talking about all this, and it just immediately went out of my head. So,
Okay, so they're 7-5.
yeah.
They have Jacksonville, then the bye week, then Miami, Kansas City, Baltimore, Tennessee.
So, yeah, I mean, if Tennessee, oh man,
That is a tough,
that's
tough
brutal.
schedule.
Dolphins are playing
That's
well right now.
brutal. Yeah. And I'm kind of looking at it like, okay, well, then Tennessee has, if they can get past Washington, like you may be able to even get in at 8-9, maybe. But even if this team were to make it to 8-9, I think that does more good because that means that Tennessee Titans, right? It really would mean that Will Levis played well because
Yeah, for sure.
you can't win games. They have proven this team cannot win games unless both Will Levis and the defense play well. They
Yeah,
cannot win games outside of that. I mean, Mason Rudolph games aside, like that is the situation. So that would mean that even if they got to 8-9, Will Levis played well. And that is a good thing. We've always said that if Will Levis plays well and earns that 2025 job, that is best case scenario for the Titans,
for
especially in
sure.
this quarterback class.
For sure. Yeah, I don't have anything to add to that.
There you go. Well, if you don't have anything to add, I don't have anything
Well,
to add. Do you have a one more thing, I
no,
guess?
I have been playing hurt tonight. You have been carrying the show. I've been drinking all this water to try and keep my throat what's the term?
Moist,
Moist, wet,
lubricated.
lubricated. There we go. I'm trying to keep this throat lubricated. You know how I do. And now all this water is starting to catch up to me and I feel like I'm just about to just piss myself. So maybe that's a new.
You're just a regular H2O queen is what you are.
Yeah, maybe that's a new award we can give the piss player of the
Yeah.
week, guy that pissed himself on the field. I don't know.
Well, happy Thanksgiving to you, Stoney. Happy Thanksgiving to those that are listening instead of talking to their family. If you're listening to this on Thanksgiving or taking it on to head maybe listen to this on the way to family or away from family. Have a happy holidays. We'll see you guys next week. You can follow me on Twitter at the Zach Lines. You can follow Stoney at Stoney Keeley, stackinginbox.com, Soberos Network, of course, 1045 The Zone, Monday through Friday, 1 p.m. to 3 p.m. Central Standard Time. You can hear me and Blaine Bishop on Cover 2 Radio on 1045 The Zone. Of course, Ramon, Kayla, and Will, where producer Bert is at, and all of his necklace, baby teeth, and whatever else.
Love Bert.
Maybe there's like a billable cord necklace, I guess, maybe a ring or something that his mom has.
Yeah.
And then you have Buck Rising Show where you get to hear Lucas Panzica talk football and Buck just talk. And then you have 3HL. I'm just flaming people.
Yeah.
Then you have
Happy Thanksgiving though.
Happy Thanksgiving. You have 3HL with Don Davenport, the mayor himself, and then of course Ron Slay. And I think that is all the shows. And then we got the post-game, pre-game shows on Sundays for everything there. Other than that, this has been Football and Other F Words, and you have just been effed.